we wrap up 2025. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts for Monday, the 29th of December. Vic and Neil, back from the break. And at the end of the show, something for you to ponder, Mr. Smith.
Okay.
How many shows will we have done in the calendar year of 2025? Because we will not do a show on Wednesday because there's afternoon hockey, both New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So we'll return on the back end of the new year on Friday. So just something for you to ponder and maybe for our audience to think about how many shows that we have done together. More so that we could actually put up looking at our respective mugs for this amount of time.
Okay. I'll calculate that in my brain as we go through the show.
See what you come up with. I'll give you a 10-show window. So,
okay.
All right. So teams come back from the break on Saturday evening, and, we often hear how much griping goes on about the schedule makers and the fact that there are back-to-backs and the condensed schedule and that teams wind up playing a rival and have their season series done before the turn of the calendar year. But at least coming out of the break, there were some flights that were involved for traveling clubs, but nobody had to move outside of their own time zone.
The teams that were very close proximity didn't have much time to get there, but they didn't need that much time to get there. And then teams that did not play, for example, Philadelphia didn't play on the first scheduled day, but flew to play in Seattle last night. And so, yeah, they do have a lot of mindfulness of that day after the Christmas break and how long it's going to take you to get back and who should you play and who are you going to have an equal or lesser benefit to which team playing in the game.
And the only other flight or change of time zone, rather, for Sunday was Pittsburgh traveling to Chicago to take on the Blackhawks. But I think when we get to September of 26, might be a good idea to have Steve Hatzapetros, who I believe is still running the schedule department for the NHL, to have him on to maybe go through what the permutations are, how they decide what their schedule is going to look like. Because unlike when you and I were mere youths, there are so many events in all of these buildings now with the NBA and concerts and other things going on that I think the matrix is a lot more complicated than it used to be when Steve started doing this 30 years ago.
Well, and the other thing is there's 32 teams, and that's a lot of teams that you have to get playing the right number of games and the right number of games against their own conference, the right number of games against their own division. And it's tough. And then the teams get a say in what day they want to play their home games and what time they want to start their home games. And don't forget that when you're playing an afternoon game, for example, if a team likes playing afternoons, they have to take into consideration that the opponent hasn't played for 24 hours at least as well. So it is very complicated.
Would be an interesting topic, but not today, because as we move forward, let's start at the top of the NHL. And the Colorado Avalanche on Saturday win their seventh straight, 6-5 in a shootout over Vegas, in a game in which they overcame 4-2 and 5-4 deficits in the third period. Nathan MacKinnon with a goal and 2 assists in the shootout winner. Neil, this was a game that you wish there was no shootout, because for the teams to go into overtime 5-5, I want a winner, and I want a winner in the 3-on-3, not the skills competition.
Exactly. It's interesting because I keep saying this, and every game that I see that ends up in overtime, it's almost like the teams are playing to get to overtime so that they know they've at least secured 1 point. You'd like to see it where there was more meaning to it than that, and especially when it comes to the shootout. However, I know a lot of fans love the shootout. It's exciting and all that, but it's not a way to get a point in the standings.
I don't find it exciting. I never have. Just saying.
Well, I don't blame you. I don't find it exciting either, but I don't necessarily find 3-on-3 exciting. I think it's great skills and stuff, but that's not hockey. Hockey's meant to be played with 5 players on the ice and a goaltender.
I still think it's exciting, though. And it took me a while to buy in. I mean, I like the 4-on-4. The 3-on-3 I had to warm up to. But I have to say that it is exciting. It's entertaining. Is it hockey in its truest form? No, it's not. But it gives me a lot more of a buzz than watching a shootout.
Yeah. Well, everybody has their thing that they like, and I don't like either one. I would rather it just went to overtime the way hockey's supposed to be played, which is 5-on-5. And I know what the naysayers would say is that, well, you'll never get a winner. You'll always end up with no winner. And then how are we going to get a winner? And then, of course, my answer is you don't necessarily need a winner. There's nothing wrong with a tie.
Yeah. No, you are in favor of 2 points for a winner, nothing for a loser.
Exactly. And 1 point if you tie.
And we grew up watching ties, so I still don't see what's wrong with that. But I want to go back to Colorado for a second, because right now they are projecting 62 wins. Boston had 65, which is the league record 3 years ago. But they are projecting 139.6 points for the season. And the Bruins had 135 that year. So any thoughts on whether you think the Avs can reach or eclipse one or both of these marks?
It doesn't look like they're going to eclipse the wins number because, as you said, they're projecting only at 62, and I can't imagine them even playing better than they've been playing. It'll be hard to beat that Boston record. You really got to have the pedal to the metal the entire season. I mean, the Avs are good enough to do it if they can stay away from injury. It'll really be interesting to see. And I guess we're anointing them the President's Trophy already because they're so far in front.
Yeah, that may be true, but as the Bruins found out, it's what you do in the playoffs that count. And this is all great for the time being. You certainly want to be playing well at all times during the year, and the Avalanche have done that. But until we get to April, I'll go back to what I said about the Bruins that year, that 65 plus 135 equaled so what when they went out in the first round against Florida.
Yeah, but, we do have a 7-month stretch where we watch hockey. And so if we take on that attitude, then we might as well not even watch it for 7 months. Just watch the playoffs.
Fine. Then I'd be missing what's going on with the Buffalo Sabres because they have won their 8th straight, 4-1 over Boston on Saturday. They're now the 3rd wild card in the East. They're tied in points with Florida. And they kick off a 3-game road trip. Monday in St. Louis, then they go to Dallas and Columbus. And then they come home for 6 out of 7, where they are 12-5-2 this season. So if the Sabres come out of this little 3-game swing, maybe getting 3 points, maybe even 4, they're going to have a chance to actually legitimize themselves as a playoff team.
They sure are, and they've turned it around really well. And I guess Lindy Ruff now is looking pretty good in things, whereas he looked pretty bad early in the season. Or maybe just the GM changes caused all this. Jarmo Kekalainen has come in with some magic fairy dust and sprinkled it on the team, much the same way as he did in Columbus. And now all of a sudden they're just rocketing up in the standings.
So that move of firing the assistant GM, that's really the cause of all this.
Oh, that's what's caused all of this. Yeah, I mean, they're just rocketing up in the standings.
A couple of good comebacks on Sunday, one resulting in a win, one resulting in a shootout loss. Columbus Blue Jackets were down 2-1 in the final 5 minutes against the New York Islanders, but Ivan Provorov and Kirill Marchenko score within a minute and 14-second span, and then they add an empty netter, a 4-2 win over the Islanders. Zach Werenski missed his second straight game He is on IR retroactive to December 20th, so it means that he could come off at any time. For the Blue Jackets, that's a great win. Without their star defenseman coming out of the break, a little bit of feel good. I think this team has underperformed, at least in the standings, the entire season thus far. So this is certainly a good way to get out of the gate coming out of the break.
Oh, absolutely. And they played an Islander team that had played the Rangers the day before. So for all intents and purposes, they should win that game at home against a tighter opponent. But David Riddick was tremendous for the Islanders in net, who has been playing back-to-back games, by the way, because of the fact that Sorokin is not healthy to play. So Riddick played them both. He played the game against the Rangers, which was a shutout win, and then he played the game in Columbus. And he was great up until very late in the game when they were able to get those two by him. And as you said, for the Blue Jackets to win without Werenski is a big deal because he is one of the top guys in the league as an offensive defenseman, mentioned for the Norris Trophy, and rightfully so.
I want to go back to the Islanders for a second because you were at that game at UBS Arena on Saturday, and the Islanders looked like they barely broke a sweat against a Ranger team that's now been shut out 8 times this season.
There's such an anomaly in the Rangers because they've been shut out 8 times, but they have the most road wins in the entire league, 14 road wins. So one doesn't go along with the other one, does it? I mean, how are you that good on the road, but you're terrible at home? And I got to tell you, against the Islanders the other night, they looked pitiful. I mean, it was pitiful.
Fit our next game. Montreal Canadiens down in Tampa on Sunday, come back from 3-0 and 4-1 in the third period. They force overtime on a goal by Juraj Slafkovsky. That was his second of the game with 3 seconds left in regulation. They dominate the overtime, but lose in the shootout. But still, this is a very good point for Montreal to get. I mean, it's the loser's point, but there is a level of satisfaction for Marty St. Louis' team there.
Well, yeah, to be able to come back and grab a point, just think about it. You're down 3-0, then you're down 4-1 in the third, but you don't give up, and you end up forcing overtime, and you come within a hair of winning that game. So that is really a good game for them against a very formidable opponent in Tampa Bay Lightning. So Kucherov with 2 goals in that game looked like the old Kucherov. At one point, he tried to set Hagel up for a goal, I think, because that's the way he is. He often will give up on a goal himself to try to get somebody else a goal.
In that overtime, as I just mentioned, Canadians dominated, and it almost looked as if Tampa Bay was just gassed from the effort put forth against the Florida Panthers on Saturday. So now I'm going to backtrack to that game because somebody must have known something, Neil. And let's go back to the preseason where these two teams in early October played twice, totaled 508 minutes in penalties. But the 2 games during this regular season that they have played thus far only had 66 minutes in penalties. But like I said, somebody must have known something was up because before this game, the league put both teams on notice, and 2 of their most veteran officials, Wes McCauley and Kelly Sutherland, were assigned to this game. Well, neither team got the memo because there were 136 minutes in penalties, 18 combined power plays. This game took 2 hours and 51 minutes to play. And you saw a scrum maybe every 2 or 3 whistles. It was just nonstop. And in that game, Panthers' Anton Lundell and the Lightning Scott Sabourin were both fined for their actions in that game. And now moving back ahead to Sunday, Sabourin fought Arbor Jacki in that game against Montreal and came out second. Took a hard right hand to the face, dropped to his knees, left the ice with the aid of the officials, and did not return. A lot going on with Sabourin, a lot going on with the Lightning, and coming out of the break, a little bit of feistiness.
Yeah, and Sabourin caught that one right on the jaw. And that's how you get a concussion, is when your jaw goes back. It's your bottom. That's in the boxing. That's why they wore mouth guards all those years. It wasn't for their teeth. It was to stop the jaw from clenching, which is the act which causes the concussion. And Sabrin got it right on the button from Jackeye. That was one of the fights that you don't see very often, that kind of pugilism.
True heavyweight also. And the thing that's lost in this, Sabrin actually got some good shots in on his own. But when you're the one that goes down, nobody remembers it.
Well, and you've got to say, too, they both have a shield on. So you can only hit the guy from below the nose. It doesn't matter how many times you hit somebody in a shield. It doesn't do anything. But this time, Jackeye caught him right on the button, and he went down literally like he was knocked out. And I think the officials thought he was knocked out. That's why they both helped him to the bench.
We've heard the term out on his feet, and that's what it certainly looked like.
For sure.
But sometimes you don't get the expected pugilism, as you like to refer to it, because if you remember on December 23rd, the Oilers and Flames played in Edmonton. It was a 5-1 Edmonton win, and there were 154 penalty minutes. So we thought, all right, we're coming out of the break. We're going to play the rematch in Calgary. Calgary's going to want their revenge. More of the same? Wrong. 14 penalty minutes, and the revenge actually came on the scoreboard where the Flames won their 7th out of their last 8 at home, beating the Oilers 3-2. So like you often said, you can never predict this league.
No, and who could predict the Oilers and the Flames? For example, we all have the Oilers as a favorite to go far this season. Before the season started, I'm talking about. We all had Calgary as a rebuilding team. Everybody was talking about trading Kadri in October. So you would never think that, you would get into late December and have the mighty Oilers go just down the road to Calgary and lose 3-2 to the lowly Flames. But sure enough, they're not the lowly Flames anymore, and the Oilers aren't that hot.
Well, it just speaks to their inconsistency that we've seen all season. I mean, it does appear that they are on a 2-step forward, maybe a half-step back trajectory right now. Good night for the Flames, and I expect the Oilers will bounce back in short order. So let's talk about assistant coaches now, because there was a change made behind the Toronto bench where Mark Savard was dismissed. He was running the Maple Leafs power play. And Steve Sullivan was named as the new assistant. He was an assistant with the Toronto Marlies, played 16 NHL seasons, over 1,000 games, and 75 of his 290 career goals, about 26%, came on the power play. So let's bring somebody new into the mix. And sure enough, over the weekend, the Leafs power play goes 3 for 5, and they move from last in the NHL at 13% to 27th on Monday morning at 15.5. But the one thing that I noticed was there's more confidence moving the puck. There's none of this 5-forward nonsense, and just the entire cadence of the Maple Leafs power play looked better in those 2 games than what we've seen. It's a small sample size, but if this is an area that the Maple Leafs can truly improve in, it's going to improve their chances of at least pushing their way up in the bubble once we get to the second half.
Absolutely. With the offensive weapons that the Toronto Maple Leafs have, that's the way they're going to climb in the standings, is through capitalizing on power plays. And they hadn't been doing that, obviously, so far this season. Now they're starting to do it. As you said, small sample size. But if they continue to have a decent power play, certainly the Leafs will jump up in the standings.
In that Ottawa-Toronto game on Saturday, the first of the power play goals was scored by William Nylander, scored against Linus Ullmark. Nylander wound up leaving that game with a lower body injury and did not play Detroit on Sunday. He is considered day-to-day. But the bigger news here is Ullmark has taken a personal leave from the Senators, and he gave up 4 goals and 14 shots in only 27 minutes and 28 seconds of playing time. So here's another situation where we have a player stepping away from the team, and we certainly wish him well. And he will come back when he is ready. He's got the full support of the Senators, which, of course, comes as no surprise. But this is always a difficult thing for a team and for an organization when a player has to step away.
It is, and it's happening more often now than it did in the past. Yep. And you've got to consider, too, that these players don't live around the corner. I mean, if Ullmark has to go home, you're talking about Sweden. You're not talking about Cambridge. So, there is a big difference in it. The teams obviously are supportive when it's something that's personal like this, whatever it is. We'll see how the Senators will fare. They'll have to rely on Maryline now going forward until Ullmark gets back.
And Hunter Shepard has been called up to back up Maryline in the Senators' net. You know how we have said over time that if a team is slumping or a player is slumping, all they need to do is call us because we can get them out of it simply by mentioning things on our show, correct?
Yes, correct.
In our last show before the break, we had noted the awful Kings home record, which was 4-8-4. And we had also spoken about two players in particular that we did not believe were carrying their weight, Alex Laferriere and Quinton Byfield. So on Saturday against Anaheim, they turn around, they put up a 4 spot in the first period. Laferriere gets his first career hat trick, all assisted by Anze Kopitar, and Byfield has a goal and an assist in a 6-1 win for the Kings over the Ducks. And if there's a get well tonic for LA, it is Anaheim because they're 13-1-2 in their last 16 against the Ducks.
You looked at that game. The Ducks are having a much better season, a great season actually for them. And you figured, well, the poor Kings, they can't get out of their own way. And yet it turns around and goes the other way. That's an amazing stat. 13-1-2 in the last 16 times these two teams have matched up. Amazing.
Here's a streak that was broken, though. On Saturday, Thatcher Demko had a career mark of 13-0-0 against the San Jose Sharks with 2.14 goals against average and .926 save percentage in those games. So what happens? He gives up 4 goals on 36 shots, and the Sharks win 6-3. And in that game, Elias Pettersson returned after missing 8 games for the Canucks. He celebrated his 500th NHL game with a -3.
Wow. Doesn't say good things. So Thatcher Demko, 13-0-0, now 13-1-0 against the San Jose Sharks. It shows you, too, that San Jose is starting to make their presence known. And we've been saying that for a while now.
One other player note here, because in addition to Laferriere having his first career hat trick, Justin Brasso of the Pittsburgh Penguins also did so on Sunday in a 7-3 win in Chicago. You remember that Pittsburgh had come into that game with just 1 win in their last 10. So that was certainly a feel-good win for the Penguins against the Chicago team that is really struggling to the point that they started Spencer Knight in goal. Arvid Soderblom came in after the Penguins put up 4 goals, and Knight went back in for the third period. So you know things aren't good when your starter winds up finishing the game after being relieved.
And that was also Nick Foligno, the captain, his first game back in the lineups. But they are missing Bedard. That's the biggest loss. They are missing Nazar. And so Pittsburgh came in and took advantage of it. But, boy, they came right after them in that first period in Chicago. It was awful for the Blackhawk fans. Just awful. And Spencer Knight deserved to get pulled. He was not playing well in that first period.
And he's been great for them for the most part for this season. But going back to Foligno, he did score the first goal for Chicago, his first of the season. So maybe this is a sign that they can get themselves back on track. And besides Foligno, other players coming back over the course of the weekend. Patrick Kane, the Red Wings, in the win against Toronto, he had missed 6 games with an upper body injury. Bo Horvat for the New York Islanders returned in the win against the Rangers on Saturday after missing 5 games with a lower body injury. He scored his 20th goal of the season on Sunday in Columbus. Jared McCann of the Seattle Kraken returned Sunday against Philadelphia. Blake Lizotte had 2 assists in that Penguins win in Chicago. Matthew Olivier came back for the Columbus Blue Jackets in that game against the Islanders. He had missed 13 games with an upper body injury sustained on November the 24th. And Brandon Hagel for the Tampa Bay Lightning came back in their game Sunday against the Montreal Canadiens. And some related news with the Lightning. Defenseman J.J. Moser signed an 8-year extension, $54 million in total, 6.7 average per year. He is 25 years old, and you can see Julien Brisebois trying to set up maybe a little bit longer term. Ryan McDonough is 36. Captain Victor Hedman is 35. So this is an investment long-term indeed for the Lightning.
And Moser is a good player that's going to be around a long time. This contract takes him, obviously, until he's 33, which will be near the end for him. But you're right. McDonough, who's hurt again, by the way, and out of the lineup, as is Hedman with the operation he had on his arm. This gives him somebody for the future. And as a manager, that's what you got to do. You got to keep looking down the road, keep making sure that the team is going to be okay down the road. As the coach and the staff take care of the games at hand, you've got to keep your eye on the future.
One quick additional injury note. Forward Pius Suter for the St. Louis Blues out 4 weeks with an ankle injury. And a trade came down on Monday afternoon. Forward Igor Chinnikov has been moved from the Columbus Blue Jackets to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for draft picks. Chinnikov had 3 goals and 3 assists in 29 games this season for Columbus. Chinnikov had asked to be traded last summer, making his request public through his agent. He had some misunderstandings with head coach Dean Evison, and now he has gotten his wish and has been moved on to the Steel City. Some international stuff to talk about. The World Junior Championships continue on Monday. United States, back-to-back defending champions, 2-0-0 mark, and their 6 points is tied with Sweden, top Group A. A little bit of injury concern for the Americans. Cole Hudson left game against Switzerland on Saturday after taking a puck to the head. He did not practice on Sunday, but the U.S. is hoping that he will be back at some point during the remainder of the tournament. The U.S. plays Slovakia on Monday and Sweden on Wednesday to conclude group play. And Canada has a regulation and overtime win for 5 points. They are second behind Finland in Group B. They will play Denmark on Monday and the Finns on Wednesday to wrap up their group play. And for the Olympics, the deadline for rosters is on New Year's Eve, and the announcements will come by Team Canada New Year's Eve, and the United States probably around January 2nd. Finland and Sweden will also announce their rosters on or about that date. But the bigger thing is, will they have a building to play in? And if they have a building, will they have ice to skate on?
From what I'm hearing, the league is confident that the building will be ready and the ice will be ready and will be of NHL quality by the time they get there and start play. It doesn't seem to be the concern that it was a month ago. And that's what I'm hearing anyway from people that have been in the meetings.
Upcoming this week, the big headliner, the Winter Classic, January 2nd, 8 o'clock at Lone Depot Park in Miami. It'll be the Rangers and the Panthers. And the Rangers have 2 things going for them in the midst of this moribund season. It is their 14 road wins, and they also have an NHL best 5-0-0 in outdoor games. This stadium where the Marlins play in has a retractable roof. The hope is that they will be able to open it for this game. And this will also be the Panthers' first ever outdoor game.
And it's not hard to understand why it would be their first ever outdoor game, being a team in Florida and trying to keep ice cold and hard in that state. So we look forward to this and see how these guys with their wizardry of how they do this, how they put an outdoor ice rink in Florida and have an NHL game on it. It should be really exciting.
The Stadium Series will take place in early February, also in Florida, when the Bruins meet the Lightning. But you were part of the very first outdoor game in Caesars Palace in 1991. And from what I recall, there were issues in that game that went beyond the ice.
Oh, well, there was. It was hard to keep the ice frozen. They had to put a cover over it. And then they had lizards and things jumping around out on the ice, grasshoppers and different things in that desert climate. So, but that was an exciting night. That was the year that we traded for Mess. And of course, he wasn't in that game. Adam Graves was. Bernie Nichols was for us. And of course, it was Bernie Nichols playing against his old team, the LA Kings, and Wayne Gretzky. So that was an exciting night. And that, of course, that area that game was played, they placed the rink was a parking lot, which is now a building there. So it's gone.
The game was a 5-2 win for the Kings. And Gretz had even said that whatever was flying was attracted to the lights. And as soon as they hit the lights, they dropped down onto the ice.
Ty Domi played in that game for us, the Rangers, and commented for many years now about his memory of that game is the grasshoppers flying around and being all over the ice. So it was quite a night in Las Vegas for those two teams.
Our website is NHLWraparound.com, where you can find New York Centric, written by Patrick Hoffman, Neil's Nuggets, and Smith's Picks. Big weekend for you.
Yeah, last night was a good one. But as we know, every winning streak is followed by a losing streak.
Well, you did go 7-2-1, though.
No, that is pretty good. It is. I'm not complaining.
Reached the 200 win mark for the season with a big 4-1 on Sunday.
Yeah. And had Philadelphia gotten their act together, I could have been 5-0, but they went down to the Kraken, and that was my one mistake.
Did you write to Keith Jones? Tell him how disappointed you were?
Yes, I did. And do Danny Briere.
All right. As this is our last show of 2025, big thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in all year long. If you are listening to us via Apple or Spotify, please leave a review. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, please subscribe. Our latest subscribers, Dan M., RFJF 1430, Anders Blegberg, and Bruce Bennett, who has told us he's a big fan of our show, and now he is a subscriber as well.
Good for him. Good for Bruce. That's great. I know he does like the show. He's told me that several times.
Right at the start, I had made mention of how many shows we had done in the calendar year 2025. You have now had time to ponder that. Do you know what the number is?
I'm going to take a stab at it and say 160.
That's very good, because I gave you a window of 10 between our franchises in 2025, NHL Wraparound, Short Shift, Stanley Cup Date, and New York Centric. We have done 165 shows this year.
Wow. And what about Hall of Fame edition and celebrity? You didn't mention
It's all
those.
baked in. All baked in.
Okay.
It's like a good kugel.
All right.
Happy New Year, my friend.
You too. Let's get on to 26 and keep this going.
And all the best to our listeners as well. Whatever you're doing New Year's Eve, please travel safe, and we will speak to you again with Short Shifts on Friday.